Guys, go ahead and hit mute there. Welcome, everybody. Apologize for the delay. We had a little bit of technical difficulties we've overcome, so we'll get started shortly. Thank you. It's great to see some repeat names out there, some folks that I haven't seen for a while. So please use the chat and say hi.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. As David said, thank you for bearing with us for that short little delay here, but thank you for joining our Converged User Group Community Hour Webcast. The purpose of these Community Hour series is to virtually connect with all of our Converged User Group members. This year, they are held every third Thursday at our new time, 12 p.m. Eastern, to discuss a variety of topics based on member interest. So be sure to share future topic ideas with our team if there is anything that you are interested in hearing. If you missed any of the past few community hours, they are posted on our website under the resources page. If you're not familiar with the Converged User Group, we are a customer-led community connecting members, exploring Dell converged and hyper-converged solutions to share ideas, best practices, and experiences. As David mentioned, please use the chat or the Q&A function for discussion with your peers. Our speakers will respond to questions during or at the end of today's discussion. As mentioned, your feedback helps us plan future sessions, so please participate in any surveys and polls that we will be launching throughout today's webinar. And if you complete the survey, all participants will be entered into a drawing to win some great prizes. So definitely be sure to complete that. I will be sure to share the link at the end of the webcast. And with that, I will pass it along to David so he can introduce our speakers for today.
Here. Now, let's see, can folks hear me? And I lost my view of the speakers. Let me do this. All right, panel, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, please. Fantastic. All right, welcome everybody, and thank you so much, Hollis. We've got a fantastic new episode of the Converged Community Hour coming for you. My regular co-host, Jonathan Toulon, is on assignment. JT is also the president of the Converged User Group, and that's why he's usually my co-host, but have no fear. We have another fantastic board member here and a very, very special guest whom I will introduce shortly. But before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dell Technologies and VMware, for helping to make this possible. And thank you all for joining. You know, maybe we've got the light at the end of the tunnel. I hope so. Maybe some of you have your vaccines. It's amazing to believe that it's been over a year since we went into lockdown, but I hope that we can all gather soon in person and have a lot of fun and just enjoy shaking each other's hands and saying, hey, maybe drinking a beverage of some sort. We'll get there. We'll get there. Now, I'd like to introduce my panelists today. Co-hosting with me, Chris Stanley, head of IT and security at LoopUp and also a Converged User Group board member. Chris, welcome. And our very special guest, Julian Erbert, DevOps Manager, Parkway School District. Julian, thank you for coming on. Before we do dive in, and I hand it over to you, Chris, as Hollis mentioned, we want this to be interactive. We want your opinions. We want you to feel free to ask questions through the chat or use the Q&A. We also have started this year with some polling. We find that very helpful to get to know the audience and to have conversations real time. So we'll start with that. Hollis, can you go ahead and pull up poll number 1, please? And then Chris, you're not new to the Zooms, but new as a co-host. So I'll hand it over to you. Would you do me a favor and just quick introduce yourself to everybody, and then you can take it away.
Thank you, David. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Chris Stanley. So I'm head of IT and security at LoopUp. a telecommunications company. So good industry at the moment. Just a quick background, I worked in hospitality up until April last year, VxRail customer since 2017. And now deploying VxRail also at LoopUp as we go through a transition period. I won't go on too much, and David will prompt me, and he has got a big button to cut me off if I talk too much. So we will go over to Julian, who's going to give us some of his experience today. And he's from Parkway School District. So Julian, if you can just tell us a bit about Parkway School District, where you are, number of users, staff, buildings, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Chris, I can do that. My name is Julian Erber. I'm the DevOps manager for Parkway School District. We're outside of St. Louis, Missouri, kind of in a suburb. We have 17,500 students with about 3,500 staff and about 35 buildings for our students and staff.
Wow. So you have a few headaches then. So the
Yeah.
17,500 students are all users, which you have to manage from a end user point.
That's correct.
And Julian, you guys have experience with block and rail, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we've been a VxBlock customer since 2014. VxRail customer since 2019.
All right, fantastic. So I'm looking forward to having you share some of your lessons learned and any best practices you can share with the members. Before we dive into that, let's get a sense of, Hollis, how did the poll turn out? Who do we have listening today? There we go. All right. So it looks like a bunch of rail owners. That's fantastic. And we've got a bunch of block representing some PowerFlex. This is great. Even some rack SDDC. All righty. Fantastic. Well, great, folks. Let's dive right into it. Julian, VDI. Let's talk VDI. You guys were brilliant, and you saw the pandemic coming. And so you said in summer of 2019, we need VDI for the school district, and we need VDI on our VxRail. And you guys were well prepared going into this. So how did you make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we for sure didn't plan on it. It worked out. It worked out very well for us. But so one of the things that we've always had an issue with is students that take specialty classes and anything related to Adobe, anything related to Autodesk, these high-end use softwares. It really limited our students to access those kind of softwares to a lab with high-end computers, and they had an hour a day to go to this classroom, complete their work, and they're done. So really it kind of, had their learning experiencing limited to this, really short experience. So what we wanted to do was change with our curriculum folks on how this is delivered to students. We wanted them to be able to do it from home in a free period, really be able to take this to the next level, and that we're not limiting their curiosity and learning experience. So when we looked at it, VDI seemed a good option to provide around that we can provide that service from anywhere at any time, 24/7.
So that sounds like a fantastic opportunity or use case for VDI. When you pulled the trigger in 2019, how many years prior were you looking at this and kind of pushing the rock up the hill, so to speak? And what kind of made it happen in 2019 for you guys? Is there something you can share there? Because Chris, I know back when you were at your other job, you were always looking at VDI. but we had many conversations where you're like, yeah, it's on the priority list, and then it gets pushed, something else it always got moved to the back burner. Julian, did you experience something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we were getting ready to go through a refresh. So that's one of the other things that, we struggled with, was that these machines need to be high end, and they were on a 3-year refresh cycle just to be able to keep up with the requirements that Adobe and Autodesk put out there. So when it came down to looking at a refresh, since we were already a VDI, we had VDI in a small scale in our technology department. And so we always had this kind of in our back of mind, oh, eventually this might be that might be a good option. Um, but then when it was a combination of technology, and then our curriculum folks say, hey, we don't want to have this classroom where there's no collaboration, because the kids come in, they sit at a desktop that's pointed a certain way, but really the new classroom styles are not like that anymore. It's changing. You don't have all the desks pointed in looking at the teacher anymore. Everything is more changing into a more collaborative space. So they kind of came to us looking for a solution, maybe like a laptop or something more mobile is what they were looking for. And so then we came in and said, well, really, with this, we can even go more on what you're looking for. So it was kind of, and from a curriculum and a technology focused, going that route.
And Julian, so how did you decide on VxRail to be the sort of underpinning technology for VDI?
Well, we were looking at something that obviously in a school district, we have limited resources to dedicate to managing environments, updating things like that. So we were looking for something that's easy to manage. We wanted to stick with our single support. So that's where, being us already have been a VxBlock customer, that one number support for everything that's going to be handled by that was very important to us. So we knew that we didn't want to change going away from that, but we wanted something that's more can be managed by us a little bit more, less, requires a lot of expertise. So we actually went down with Dell to Round Rock, Texas, and really tested out VxRail, and really did some failover testing, tested VDI. So that was a really great experience.
Well, I'm glad to hear it was a great experience. By the time you got it in, so 2019, you guys do a lot of your stuff over the summer, which makes perfect sense being a school district. You rolled into the new year, 2019. How was it working before lockdown? And then were you able to gen up a whole bunch of new stuff after lockdown, or did it just really all of a sudden you got a bunch of people who were on the fence saying, wow, this thing's fantastic. We're so glad you guys, we're so glad we made the right choice and supported you in your decision?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And so yeah, we deployed over the summer. It was about a 60-day deployment, from building all the images to all the testing, and then roll it out to our teachers who, some of them were reluctant. It's a big change, right? I mean, we're changing the classroom, how it's being delivered, and they were used to their desktops a certain way and having certain rights. And so in the beginning, we had a lot of pushback, a lot of changing. But once COVID hit, and those classes didn't skip a beat. In other areas, they had to figure out, well, how are we going to do music at home? But those classes that were doing Adobe, AutoCAD, they never saw a difference. Those teachers were teaching the same as they were in the classroom, because they still get the same experience. If the student is at home or here, the VDI experience is going to be the same. So we really saw that the teachers really understood the value then, on how this can be utilized at home.
So, and Julian, obviously a lot of people's business continuity plans have changed given a pandemic. Was that when you looked at VDI and VxRail, was business continuity something you considered? If everything stops working in building XYZ, how would we continue in another building and or at home potentially if there's a mass outbreak, which probably none of us could say.
Right. No, it really is. I mean, we really, even though, in the school district, we don't, make any money per se in that way, but, our services are really important to our teachers who are teaching, our future. So continuity, uptime, especially with having a VBlock, is very important to us, and that we wanted to make sure that we continue that. You know, we ever since once we switched to the V block back in 2014, and ever since then, our downtime is basically non-existent, besides a scheduled maintenance outage. I mean, I'm not saying that just to make somebody look good, but it's the truth. But also, then your users come expect that. They expect, and you build a certain trust, and it's really important for us to keep that to our students, our staff, and our teachers.
You don't hear about from people when things are going right, do you?
Exactly. You'll hear when something goes really wrong. So.
And that's what they remember. So yeah, very important.
So, Chris, can I jump in?
Of course you can.
Sorry about that, Julian. Some lessons learned. There's a lot of places we could take the conversation, but the downtime that you experienced before block and then transitioning to block, was there a big learning curve to get the folks to feel comfortable with block, or was it just suddenly they realized, wow, this just doesn't fail, so we can pay attention to other things? Through your journey, are there some highlights that you'd say, hey, if there's new members out there who are looking at CI and HCI, are there recommendations you have for them to, like, if I had known this a little sooner, I'd like, I could have done so much more. Any thoughts along those lines in general? And then maybe if you could kind of take that down to the VDI deployment level, I think that would be fun to talk about.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, after we deployed the VBlock, I mean, the transition was so easy. I mean, we had it, one of the biggest things when we got the VBlock was we didn't want 20 or 30 boxes showing up in our data center that has to be put together. We were looking for that one solution that showed up on a truck, got rolled into our data center, and a couple hours later everything was spun up. But what we saw then, before the VBlock, we had 3 people managing our virtual environment, storage, networking, and we were able to, focus 2 of those people into other areas. So we were able to manage, now one person manages the VBlock, and with support that just made it so simple. And we, I don't want to talk about that enough, but to us, really, in a district, what we struggled before was, you have to call this person for that, for networking, you call this person for your storage, and you call this person for your server. So really, that one number support was, I mean, that was honestly the biggest value that we got out of it, was that we called one person and they got a hold of the people. If there was somebody from VMware that we needed or somebody from the Dell side, they got those people together to work as a group. And that just saved us tons of time to reallocate people what is, worth in our area where we don't have as many, where we don't have entire teams to handle certain things, becomes invaluable for us.
Yeah, that was a big advantage when I put it in initially as well. The first thing you kind of comments on that, freeing up people's time to focus on other things and just let it run
Right.
in the background was huge, especially
And
for seeing the number of users and staff and buildings you have.
right. And then, that I can trust that somebody tested the updates for VxRail and for VBlock. Somebody already did this work for us, relying that, this has been tested. I don't need to worry about, well, what am I going to break by installing this patch? What is it going to break over here? So I think that's really been, even during the upgrade time, it's become a non-worry now that we could schedule a maintenance without having to say, okay, what's going to break, tomorrow. So that's really been, like, our downtime has become non-existent.
So you guys both were able to free people up. What are those people doing now? How did you? Are they further up the stack? What if I think about newer members who are just taking on, they're just starting their HCI or CI journey, and they're experiencing what you guys have experienced, I imagine they're going through some thought processes of, okay, can I actually let it drive itself? Do I have to do what I used to do? Or now that I feel comfortable that I don't have to do what I used to do, where would you put those people, or where did you put those people?
For us, we really focused on security. That's one of the things we didn't focus on a lot prior. We actually had a little bit of a virus outbreak in 2017, I believe, actually. So really ever since then, we actually dedicate one person now to security alone. So just because school districts have become really vulnerable and focused on attacks just because of the amount of student data we have and, the fresh social security numbers.
Yeah, and going back, David, so how in my previous employ was hospitality, as you can imagine, it's been shut for the last year. So I suppose the benefit of, whilst people are furloughed and off, the VxRail kind of is ticking there along and not needing much feeding, watering, just the updates. So it's been good in that sense. Yeah, back to VDI. What are you using as your solution, Julian?
We're using VMware Horizon. Prior to our deployment, we were Citrix customer, but kind of to us, it was really important that when we deployed such a big environment that was going to come such important, we didn't want to lose that that one company support again. I feel like I'm on a loop here, but it was so important to us that we went away from a company that we've been for a long time, but it was really important to us that we keep that, and we saw that kind of as a bottleneck in a way. So that we migrated our current staff to Horizon and then deployed Horizon for all of our students.
Yeah, simplifying it with one vendor. I mean, you and I don't get paid by Dell for doing anything. We get paid by our
Right.
employers, but yeah, it's I found using everything from as much vendor as you can. It's it makes life a lot simpler, especially when you work on strategy and what have you, and you'll get also more maybe support from them as well. Yeah.
Anytime you can sleep better at night is worth it.
Yeah. Don't wake me up at 2 a.m.
How was the transition, Julian? That must have been, was that an upstream battle that you had to take to your folks who are already, they're used to using Citrix, and now you're asking them to learn something new? How did that work for you? And then there's also a question in the chat I'm seeing, so we can get to that next.
I mean, it was definitely a change. You know, anytime you introduce a change, sometimes people can be, you know, not one to follow that as easy. But you know, we're going to provide a better service, right? I mean, we deployed a new VxRail with all flash and video cards, so there was a lot of benefits too that they weren't gonna get that they didn't see before. So in the end, it wasn't as painful as people thought, and you know, I think they're better off than they are today, and I think they're pretty happy with it.
How did you help them see past their challenges?
I mean, really just from letting them get comfortable. You know, we didn't do a flash cut one day. They're this, you know, Citrix, and the next day they get to move there exclusively. Like we deployed the system out, let them get comfortable with it. Um, you know, I think as many times as you could try to make it a smooth transition, get people more used to it, just really try to do like a flash cut. Oh, no, now you use this, you know, and let them put in input. We really use them. Hey, we give you that. Please try it out. Okay, and then really help fine tuning it. You know, get users input. We really try to focus on user experience because that feels like they're getting their voices heard.
So that's actually a great segue for my next question here. I wanted to ask you guys, you know, when you look at new technology purchases, like, you know, a new cluster VxRail or deploying VDI on VxRail, or just changing your VDI deployment from one type to another, how do you go through that process? How do you get the end users involved early on? At what point do you say, hey, it's time to get them involved? Or do the end users come to you and say, hey, we need this and I want it to be that? And then you have a conversation. Like, what does it look like? What are some best practices that you've kind of developed?
This is an interesting question for especially in the school or for us. You know, a lot of times, honestly, we have to plan ahead because tomorrow somebody will show up with oh, hey, we bought this, we're starting this project tomorrow and now we need this. So yeah, as much as we try to not, you know, educate users, but the reality is that's a lot what happens. So we really try to build an environment that's easily scalable, honestly, what I would say. And that was one of the big features we liked about VxRail is that, you know, that we can scale quickly over time if we need to and kind of upgrade as we go on, you know, every few years. Okay, we're going to add some nodes that, you know, we get into a refresh cycle. So that was one of the features we really liked about VxRail.
And how many nodes do you have at the moment, Julian, in the cluster for VxRail? How big is it?
Well, I have two clusters. The VDI clusters, a 12 node V series, and then I have a 9 node for our you know, production servers. That's an E series.
Wow.
And your production server is a general purpose? You moving everything over there, or what workloads are they responsible for?
Everything. They run everything, about 200 virtual servers.
Is that what you previously ran on Block, is it, before?
Yep. Yeah, we just recently migrated everything from the Block to VxRail.
And their Block is your DR?
Yep. We're in the process of making the plan to move our VBlock into a DR colo.
All right, cool. Well, that also makes me tremble a little bit as to what we should expect coming in the next year. But before we get to that, Rodney has a question here. Julian, maybe you can answer this. He says, Horizon can be deployed on VxRail rather than Enterprise vSphere. So I'll let you answer that. You guys are clearly running Horizon on VxRail, and I imagine your vSphere licenses were already squared away underneath VxRail, or do you have those separate from with VMware?
Actually, I'm trying to remember, but if you do Horizon Enterprise, it includes all the licensing for your VxRails, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure it does. I don't know that I understand. Rodney, if you can post, I'm not sure what you mean by rather than Enterprise vSphere.
All right. So Rodney, if you can clarify or maybe let us know if we answered your question, that'd be great, please. I think Hollis ran another poll. We could look at that, see how many folks in the audience, where they are on VDI journey. Hollis, do you have that available? Yep, I see something. Okay, about 40% not using VDI, and then smattering across. So that's pretty helpful there. Julian, any thoughts on these numbers from the audience members? Chris, any thoughts? Does this feel like
I wonder
what you guys would have expected to see?
It would be interesting to see a poll before, I suppose, pandemic. Because again, with business continuity, in my previous role, like I said, it was harder to get VDI as signed off. It was seen more of a kind of a luxury item, and then there's other things that took precedence over it. But I think going back now, if you could see into the future, they said we should have done that because it would have worked a lot better.
Yeah, I think definitely a lot of people are looking at VDI. I mean, we get, a bunch of reference calls and things like that just because, it's not going away at this point yet. I mean, and plus, schools are realizing that there's always going to be a virtual option. Even if we get past the pandemic, virtual school is not going away anymore. It's going to be an option for students, and just because some students do better. And we have to still provide the same services as to a student inside. And it seems there's a lot of use cases for VDI, and there's a lot of new options too. I mean, you can do so much in the cloud now, where you can deploy Horizon in the cloud, and you can deliver with, NVIDIA graphic card resources and things like that.
Yeah, and I suppose with VDI as well, you keep your data more central, and you haven't got users are keeping us that much on their end user device. So obviously lots of people got devices at home now, so it's from a security point, maybe VDI will become more important for people's business models now and their business continuity.
Okay, so it looks like Rodney kind of explained a little bit more. Yes, it is a separate install. So you still have you basically manage VxRail how you do on a normal basis where you log in. And then you have Horizon servers. There's a couple different servers that you need.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for covering that. Looks like David also joined a little bit late. Wants to add they have a large VDI deployment on VxRail, had it before COVID-19. I guess the question I would have there is, now that we've been a year into this, is it even bigger, or was it big enough to handle that? Julian, did you guys have to add capacity over the past year for your VDI? Did you choose to, or was it just an accelerated path that you were already built for?
Actually, right again, before we did add 2 nodes. So we started out with 10 originally. We ended up adding 2 nodes. But once once the pandemic started, and we were like couple weeks in, and then everybody came to us, oh, we need to do VDI, and eventually we're gonna be like, oh, hold on, like, because it's a resource issue, right? And so,
oh yeah,
it with VDI it becomes very, you have to run the numbers. You really have to make sure you do spec it correctly and don't overtax yourself, because what what you don't want is a bad user experience, because that talk gets out really quickly, and you just don't want that. So that's really important when you're looking at VDI.
Yeah, that's a great point. And any lessons learned for folks, yeah, that's a great point to cover. I found something in the Q&A. Jeff wants to know how many VDI desktops are you getting per host? So Jeff, we're going to answer that live, and I free that up to you, Julian, please.
Okay, so it's actually, so when you're running GPUs in a VDI, remind what we do. It's actually a limitation on how many virtual GPUs you can provide. So we have NVIDIA and M10 cards. So they're 32 gig, and I have 2 of them in each one. So, and then you assign profiles. So we have 1 gig profile across the board, and that's something we work through with NVIDIA that makes sure it can handle, any graphic resources you throw at that. So with that, we can do 64 desktops per VxRail. So we have 12 of them. So I think that's like 700 and something like that, 780 or something like that. I'm not good at the quick math.
We won't hold you to public math.
Yeah. So it's really more a limitation for us on the graphic resources than it would be like we would actually have more available, CPU and RAM, but it really becomes more a graphic calculation. And that's why it really becomes when you're speccing it and you're working through with Dell and VMware, they really help you on making sure you spec that correctly.
Now, with that, are you finding that, are you finding interesting usage patterns? Are these just sitting there, like at night, are you running different workloads on these machines when people aren't likely to flood it? Or is this dedicated, and if it's vacation, it kind of sits there and doesn't draw too much power?
Well, no, it's actually interesting that it's actually funny that we actually see a higher usage at night. A lot more kids do their homework at night. I mean, we have a lot of, even from teachers, we're hearing that kids turn their homework in at 12 o'clock in the morning. So and that's what it was built for. That's what it was designed for, to do, to provide that. And even when students are traveling, I mean, we have seen a student, we have a couple of students that were actually traveling during the pandemic and got stuck somewhere, and they had to access the environment, from somewhere else, even outside the United States. So, so yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic and a little bit crazy. Chris, any follow-on questions along with VDI?
What do you do? Are you doing anything around security now for your VD environment, for your VxRail? What you're currently doing, and what have you sort of on your roadmap to be doing? You don't have to go into too much detail if it's sensitive.
No, I mean, yeah, we're bringing students into our data center, right? So it's we try to be pretty careful, because they are curious and try to do different stuff. So we obviously did our whole, just a generic, put them in their own network section, try to shield them from all of our production servers and things like that. But we are keep looking at, how to get into more granular and really, try to secure our data center in a sense.
Yes, it's very security is one of those things that you'll never tick off. And obviously, being VMware Horizon, I suppose things like NSX then will bring on conversations where you can get down to that granularity.
Yep.
So that sparked the security poll, which we put up there. so folks can answer that. We can pivot to the security question. Chris, you've got security in your title. And Julian, you took one of your resources and dedicated them to security, which, I mean, does that really mean before 2017, you guys didn't really have a dedicated person looking at security? Has that much changed in 4 years that it's like an oh my situation? We better have at least somebody paying attention to this.
Yeah, I mean, before that, we had certain security tools, firewall, pretty basic. But we have limited staff or limited resources, and it's just somewhere we had to make a change, and we learned the hard way. We did have a virus outbreak that affected 3 of our buildings, 1,500 computers. So that really pushed us to, okay, we can't be doing this anymore. So we really invested highly into into a few products and had to dedicate a person to do that. And but we do here, actually just this last week, we had a local school district got ransomware in the entire district, shut them down. They had to cancel school at 6 o'clock in the morning, make a call to all the parents that we can't have school. If you're, if so many things are controlled by computers, and if you don't have internet, they can't log into their Chromebooks or even, access resources that they need to. So that it really puts a stop on school. So it really becomes important to take security seriously in K-12.
Yeah,
But that wasn't you guys, right?
No, it was not us.
It's a sad reality, isn't it? I mean, with kids wanting to learn and then those sort of things happening. And from my experience, yeah, in 2017, I was in a different role and there was no one dedicated to security. But as IT professionals, everyone has to have a security hat on. And I think, again, where you have that automation with VxRail, you look for products that give you similar benefits in the security world. So, I mean, we discussed NSX briefly, and if you can automate settings within that, which don't take the human error part out of it, that's what we look to do. And obviously, machine learning, malware tools, and antivirus is what I suppose everyone looks at for now. Not your traditionals. Oh, this has been discovered. More what's the machines doing? What hasn't been discovered for 0 days, and that's what you want your security products to take action on, even if it is safe. You'd rather it was stopped and then you review it. But it is, yeah, it's part of a major part of my time, and I do have specific people in the team now who are probably more half and half with their roles from security. They were pure admin and applications, but now they sort of monitor security carefully every day.
So a couple of questions come to mind for me. I know we have to start wrapping this up, and to take a term I learned from Mike Rowe, who's got a great podcast called The Way I Heard It. We're going to have to land the plane here soon. But Julian, was your issue related to patching at all? Was it an exploited vulnerability in a patch that had you been up to patching, would you have avoided it? And I guess what I'm getting at here is, would this have happened anyway, do you think? Or do you think that another benefit to the lifecycle management, the automated, the RCM from the block side, the automated lifecycle management on the rail, do you think that would have helped kind of head that issue off?
No, ours was not related to patching, but ours, okay. It was related to, it honestly was related to not having somebody dedicated to security and, following best practices. It was actually caused by having all of our user administrators on their machines across the board. Somebody a long time ago put a group policy in, added a all staff group, and added it to all the users. So, so it's really having somebody that can hold, to have a dedicated security person to really hold, our system administrators accountable for what they're doing. So I think splitting that up and wearing different hats really has helped us.
Chris, you had a thought there?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose a lot of security issues is from legacy policies. I mean, you come into a new business like I have, and there's maybe in some areas procedures that shouldn't have been put in place or just been left because no one's focused on them. And patching is probably your basic one, which you would do as a security mitigation. But the fact of the matter is, it's probably one that people don't cover on every single application. I think things like SolarWinds, I mean, that's probably an extreme version because that was affected by people paid a lot more money than us. But yeah, I think having just a patching schedule and knowing all of your software that's out there and getting the right alerts from your security vendors is probably paramount a way to start for any sort of security procedure, and that's very much what we do as a bit, or I do as a basic. But then you need to basically have someone monitoring that, and it's not something where you can take a couple of days off or stop doing it. It's going to be, it's going to happen for the rest of time that we know of.
Yeah, and it's just going to change. It's going to kind of do its, hopefully a slow evolution that we can keep up with and not a giant stair step function. Well, folks, thank you so much, Chris, Julian. I'll turn it over to you for final words. We didn't get to DR, so Julian, maybe we'll have you back if you'd like to come back sometime. We can talk a little bit about DR. Thank you for sharing your story. Final thoughts for members on VxRail, VDI, VxBlock. If you had to leave them with an early part of the journey or a big lesson learned, please feel free.
No, I mean, we're pretty happy customer, and if anybody has any specific details, we're always happy to talk on a one-to-one or email basis. I'm not sure if you reach out to David or somebody on CONVERGED user team, they'll be happy to share our contact information.
Thank you. That's fantastic, and that's why we've got the community here. So that's great, Julian. Chris.
Again, yeah. I mean, as CONVERGED users, I mean, I joined 2018 after my first VxRail install. I think if being a member going, since then has helped me introduce me to a lot of good people with, who have the same challenges as me, maybe in different business sectors, but we share a lot of the same challenges, and it's good to reach out, and everyone's always happy to help. So it's, I mean, my details are available, so if anyone wants to ask me anything, then feel free to.
Thank you. And folks, I'll get Hollis to double check it, but at member services at convergeusergroup.com, we'll get it into us, and then we can route it and make the introduction. So please feel free to use that. I think we had one final polling. We didn't get to talk about it, but we'll wrap up. Maybe Hollis, you can put that up. I think I see a number in here. Somebody's got 18 different security applications or features that they're using. Nope, not the DR strategy. Do you have the results from the security poll, Hollis, or did we push that through? Did we step on that? There we go. All right, 4 to 8, 9 plus, but and then a couple weighing in with 18 and some other things. Folks, thank you very much for attending. Clearly, we've got to talk about security in the future, and we'll add DR and maybe some automation. Julian, thank you again for your time. Good luck out there. Chris, great to see you. Thanks for bringing the global aspect, the international aspect to this.
Always happy.
And It's great. Folks, tune in next month. Let's see here. So April's a fun month for us. We have the standard April 15th will be the community hour, same time, same channel. But we're also adding a Dell Technologies preview where Chris will be coming back to co-host on that one. Yep.
You didn't have to kick me off this time. Good. Yeah.
Yep. April 29th. So we've got a couple of community hours coming up. April 15th, we'll have a new topic for you. And April 29th, we've got the Dell Tech World preview. Be safe out there. Looking forward to see folks in person as soon as we can. We're also looking for really interesting and fun, and maybe bring a little thought leadership to how we can add some community to your virtual experience. So look for communications from the Converge user group on that. Thank you again for your time. Thank you again to Dell Technologies and VMware for sponsoring this activity. And Hollis, if you're there, I will hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks, David. And thank you all so much for joining us for our March Community Hour. We hope to see you in April, as David mentioned, with our regularly scheduled April 15th Community Hour and then the Dell Technologies World preview. So we are looking forward to it. And I threw a survey in there. If you would be so kind as to complete that and share your thoughts, we would really appreciate it. But have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.
Thanks all. Be well, be safe. Take care.